My in-laws left their bedridden, mute daughter, my sister-in-law, in my care while they vacationed in Hawaii. Before they left, my husband Chris reminded me sternly that looking after her was my responsibility, emphasizing that I shouldn't neglect my duties. As soon as Chris and his family departed, my sister-in-law surprised me by sitting up and expressing a desire to leave too. I'm Rosie, 29 years old, and while I once dreamed of becoming a pop star as a teenager, I eventually realized that dream was fleeting. By the time I reached my late 20s, I had settled into a different reality. I met Chris through a friend and learned that he too once aspired to join the entertainment industry. Despite our shared past ambitions, Chris now works at a prestigious trading company in downtown Manhattan, while I had worked at a bank until I got married. During our visits to Chris' parents' house, I got to know his younger sister Jenny, who had been left bedridden and mute due to complications from a childhood fever. Despite her inability to speak, Jenny and I bonded well, communicating through sign language. However, my relationship with my mother-in-law was less pleasant. She was often sarcastic towards me, in stark contrast to Jenny's warm demeanor. Even though Chris and I lived in a condo away from his parents' house, my mother-in-law would occasionally drop by unannounced to criticize me. Initially, Chris was kind and accommodating, never hesitating to fulfill my requests or desires. However, about a year into our marriage, he began to change. He started coming home late from work, smelling of alcohol, and seemed increasingly distant. Despite my attempts to address the issue, Chris denied any change, accusing me of overthinking. It left me feeling unsettled and unsure about the future of our relationship. "I don't think I am," I retorted, feeling the frustration rise within me. "You barely talk to me anymore." But Chris dismissed my concerns, telling me to stop overthinking it before walking away to take a shower, effectively ending the conversation. One day, Chris surprised me by announcing his plans to visit his family home in Nebraska. It was unusual as he had always refused my company on such visits before. "Wait, I can come with you this time," I suggested eagerly, to which he reluctantly agreed. I expressed my desire to see Jenny, Chris's sister, whom I had grown close to. However, Chris' response seemed guarded, almost wary of our bond. On the day of our visit, I drove us to Chris's family home, stopping at a bakery to buy some pastries as a gift. His mother's disapproving frown greeted me as usual, but she softened slightly upon receiving the pastries. However, her enthusiasm was short-lived as she expressed her disappointment in the gift's repetitiveness. Chris's father was out at a meeting, prompting Chris to mention he had something to discuss with him. His sudden secrecy puzzled me, but when I pressed for details, Chris brushed me off, insisting it was none of my business. His mother chimed in, echoing his sentiment and reminding me not to pry into Chris' affairs. As we conversed, Chris proposed a family trip to Hawaii, a surprising suggestion considering his usual work commitments. However, his mother seemed displeased with my involvement in the decision-making process, accusing me of meddling and being nosy. Then came the bombshell. Chris's mother asked me to take care of Jenny during their vacation. I was taken aback by the request, feeling a mix of surprise and unease at the sudden responsibility thrust upon me. I took the luggage to Jenny's room. I explained as I returned to the living room, where everyone preparing for the trip to Hawaii had gathered. Chris's father was noticeably absent, indicating he wouldn't be joining them. As the departure time neared, Chris's voice rose above the rest of the family's, reminding me, taking care of Jenny is your job. Don't slack off. Surprisingly, even my mother-in-law chimed in, urging me to get along well with Jenny and insinuating that it was better for me to stay behind. It was absurd to hear such words from people about to abandon their immobile sister for a vacation in Hawaii, but I remained silent. Chris's warnings didn't faze me. I wasn't in the mood to see them off, so I retreated to Jenny's room. It was then that Jenny sprang up energetically from her bed and called out to me, echoing a conversation we had just the other day. "Come on, let's get going," she said, reminding me of her surprising revelation. "You know, I could actually walk." Jenny confessed. And with walking came the ability to converse. I was taken aback. Since when? I asked incredulously. Since last year, I suppose, Jenny replied casually. Why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family? I inquired, curious about her reasons. Jenny began to share an unexpected tale. Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side. Her revelation left me speechless. Considering how distant and cold my mother-in-law usually was towards Jenny, I couldn't help but understand her decision. I thought so, I murmured in response. Yeah, my mom despises me, and I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't. Jenny explained matter-of-factly. And your father? I asked, curious about his role in the situation. Dad knows everything. He's always on my side, Jenny affirmed. Her words shed light on the dynamics within their family, leaving me with a newfound understanding. That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too. What do you mean? I stammered, caught off guard by Jenny's unexpected proposal. I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort, Jenny said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I was thrilled by the idea of traveling to Hawaii with Jenny, but a sudden thought crossed my mind. But do you even have a passport? I asked, concerned about the practicalities. Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours, Jenny assured me confidently. I see, I'm really looking forward to this, I replied, feeling a mix of excitement and gratitude for Jenny's generosity. And that's how we ended up at the airport, ready to embark on our adventure to Hawaii. As we arrived, my father-in-law was there to see us off. Rosie, it's been a while. I know it must be surprising, but I hope you enjoy the trip to Hawaii. He greeted me warmly. Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered, I admitted, feeling touched by his kindness. Don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy, he replied with a smile. Thank you for your kindness, I said gratefully, before boarding the plane with Jenny. We landed in Hawaii early in the morning and checked into the resort hotel. Jenny and I were sharing a room, and as we settled in, I couldn't help but remark on her father's extensive travels. Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times, Jenny revealed, shedding light on her father's experiences. So, what's the plan? I asked eagerly, excited to explore the island. I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them, Jenny suggested, her eyes gleaming mischievously. That sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from jet lag? I suggested, feeling the exhaustion from the long flight. That sounds like a good idea. I couldn't sleep at all on the plane, Jenny admitted, echoing my sentiment. After taking a refreshing shower, we climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. We woke up in the late afternoon, feeling fully recharged and ready for our adventure. Wow, we really had a good sleep, didn't we? I remarked, stretching out comfortably. Yeah, fully recharged and ready for our battle. Jenny agreed, her eyes twinkling with excitement. Around 7 o'clock, I suggested. I'll go and scope out the restaurant. As I was looking for Chris and his party from the shadows near the entrance of the restaurant, I found them dining joyfully in a far-off spot. They were too far away for me to recognize anyone clearly, but amidst the crowd, I spotted the back of a young woman whom I didn't recognize. There hadn't been any such woman when they left Chris' parents' house. I was taken aback by this unexpected sight, nearly letting out a gasp, but I managed to suppress it. Straining my ears, I could intermittently hear Chris and my mother-in-law's voices. I'm glad it's not that woman today, Chris remarked, his tone filled with disdain. Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record, my mother-in-law added, echoing his sentiments. Their conversation took a dark turn as they discussed divorce and alimony. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract a hefty alimony from that woman, Chris declared, his voice cold and calculating. My heart sank as I listened to their cruel words. I was overcome with the urge to confront them, to expose their deceit, but I held back, returning silently to my room. When I told Jenny what I had witnessed, she was shocked and appalled. I was about to scream. Chris and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Chris even said he would find a reason for divorce. I confided in Jenny, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. "That's terrible," Jenny exclaimed, her voice filled with empathy. But seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. "That's a good thing," I agreed, feeling a sense of liberation. "Shall we make our entrance then?" Jenny and I headed towards the restaurant hall, determined to confront Chris and my mother-in-law. As we entered, we requested to sit near their table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival, too engrossed in their conversation, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I couldn't help but feel amazed as I watched Chris and my mother-in-law continue to badmouth me endlessly. Their words stung, but I couldn't help but give a bitter smile at their audacity. Seeing my expression, Jenny nodded with a determined smile, signaling it was time for us to begin our counterattack. With resolve, I stood up from my seat and stepped forward towards Chris, shouting, "Are you all having a good time?" The look on Chris and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment was unforgettable. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds before my mother-in-law finally spoke up. "Why are you here, and how did Jenny get here without a wheelchair?" she demanded. In response, Jenny stood up, giving my mother-in-law a smile, and calmly stated, "I don't need a wheelchair anymore. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time." Shocked by Jenny's revelation, my mother-in-law stammered, "When did you regain your ability to speak?" "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year," Jenny replied nonchalantly. "Then why did you hide it until now?" My mother-in-law pressed. "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak," Jenny explained, her voice steady. Realization dawned on me, and I confronted them directly. "You and Chris were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" I accused, my voice firm. My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant, but Chris quickly interjected, "What do you mean?" "We weren't saying anything bad about you, Rosie. That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I challenged, feeling a surge of confidence. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Chris stood up defiantly. "Rosie, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims," he barked. Refusing to back down, I asserted, "Once I return home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described being with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket." I stood firm, unwilling to be swayed by their pleas for forgiveness. "I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment," I reiterated, my tone unwavering. My mother-in-law's demeanor shifted abruptly, as she seemed to acknowledge her defeat. "Rosie dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Chris. This woman is not involved with Chris," she pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. But I remained steadfast in my decision. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Chris. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her. Isn't that exciting?" I retorted, a hint of satisfaction in my voice. The woman in question turned pale, her facade crumbling in the face of my resolve. She began to tremble, realizing the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, Chris fell to his knees, unfazed by the public gaze. "Rosie, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this," he implored, his voice pleading. But I remained resolute. "I will never forgive you. You are married, And yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman," I stated firmly, unyielding in my stance. As my words sank in, my mother-in-law also sank to her knees next to Chris, tears streaming down her face. "Please forgive my son," she pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table, sensing the commotion. With a sense of finality, I rose from my seat and addressed the gathering. "Well, Jenny and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home," I stated calmly. Hearing this, Chris cried out at the top of his lungs, pleading for forgiveness. "Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation," he shouted in desperation. The restaurant manager frowned and instructed a nearby staff member, then briskly told Chris something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Chris seemed taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 burly security guards arrived and hauled Chris away. Despite his sobbing and struggling, he was no match for the strong men. My mother-in-law and the other woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Jenny and I were also surprised by the turn of events. I couldn't help but feel that Chris had received what he deserved. A week later, Jenny and I returned home. Chris was quickly released but seemed to have retreated into himself, remaining in a state of shock until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to a law firm where my old college friend worked, requesting a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me. After listening to my story, she assured me that a divorce was possible and that I could claim alimony. A month later, the lawyer contacted me with news that Chris had been dating the other woman for about 6 months, making it possible for me to demand alimony from her as well. I requested the lawyer to squeeze as much alimony as possible from Chris and his woman, and she smiled and nodded in agreement. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and a substantial amount of alimony was deposited into my bank account. That's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket," I muttered as I saw the amount. 3 months later, Chris and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place, looking haggard and desperate. They pleaded for money, explaining that Chris had lost his job and the woman had run away. "I'm sorry, but I have absolutely no obligation to help you. And even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave," I responded firmly. After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to rid my house of their negative energy. I hope you guys enjoy our video. To watch more interesting stories, hit that subscribe button. Thank you.